Hi, and welcome to The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist, the show that I kind of just do whatever the hell I want with. So today I'm talking to, the Indigenous Heretic, aka Joey. Today I want to talk about decolonization. So I got you on to kind of talk about that. But first, I would like to get to know you a little bit. Where are you coming at the subject of decolonization from?
Okie dokie. Well, as my handle implies, I am Indigenous. Specifically, I'm Indigenous to North America. What's now known as the United States is where the majority of my tribes come from.
Okay.
I'm multi-tribal. I am mixed, but I was raised specifically in Lakota culture. Lakota is also known as Sioux.
Okay.
So, like, if for people who really do not know what I'm talking about, Dances with Wolves, like that's the easiest way. The people who were depicted in Dances with Wolves, that's my tribe.
Okay.
I'm non-binary.
Okay.
I use they them pronouns.
Okay.
My family name is Lame Deer, which, if you're Lakota or you know anything about Indigenous people, the name itself already carries weight with it. You can't use the name without knowing something. It's a safe bet that anybody who's using the name Lame Deer actually knows some things about Lakota people.
Okay.
I come from the angle of decolonization as far as I was born into activist parents. My grandparent generations were also activists, great-grandparents. And then, you start getting back into, for Lakota people, you go 150 years back and we're in rebellion. Like we're in full-blown, army, rebellion sort of stuff.
Right.
And so, like I come at decolonization from a rebellious sort of position, in the sense that I understand that colonials arrived, which were very different from the very first explorers. Explorers and colonials are very different people.
Okay.
One of them is just adventurous, nomadic, just wants to see new places, meet new people. They're usually incredibly open-minded human beings. They want to see new. They want to see different.
Right.
They want to have their illusions destroyed. Like,
Okay.
that's what they're looking for. Where colonials are like, I have the one right way to live, and anybody that I meet, I'm going to force it on them. So the subject of decolonizing becomes, at what point in our history as a people did the colonialism begin? Like, how far back do you have to go to find not the kind of tribalism that we talk about in modern day politics,
Right.
but the kind of tribalism that used to exist, where you had this very tight, close-knit community of people that were very interdependent on each other. Not in an unhealthy way, but in a healthy way, because they were literally building the foundations to further civilization on, teaching us how like slowly evolving into these beings that exist in huge numbers without warring with each other constantly. Like,
Okay.
we think of
Yeah.
the divisiveness politically now in the sense that, oh yeah, we're really a divided nation. Yeah, you know what? Coming to fisticuffs in the streets is a hell of a lot different than genocide. We've come a long way since then, but we have to go farther. And for people like me, going farther needs to happen with decolonization, because there's an unhealthy aspect to the actual act of colonizing. And it's an ongoing process, which is important to note in these discussions, that it's not like we got colonized as in we put it all back in a historical context. We have to use the present contextual and say we are actively being colonized today.
Okay. Okay. So when you say that we're actively being colonized today, what is that? what does that look like, I guess?
Okay. So if you think about colonialism, you put it in context. If we can take an objective step back and pretend like we are, let's say we're like aliens from another planet,
Right.
and
Alien
we've got this
anthropologists.
tech, right?
Yeah.
Right. We've got this this high tech that can help us bend space time and pop through the universe. That's the only way you're getting to Earth easily from someplace else in the universe.
Right.
So let's presuppose that you have this. Well, bending space means you've also got the capability of bending time. So let's presuppose that these aliens can bend time and take a look at snapshots throughout human history, so they can see how is it that these creatures got here. Where did they begin? Because this is going to clue you in, just like looking at a human being now as an adult. It doesn't necessarily show you how it was that this person came to be the person they are. Like, you have to hear
Right.
about their
Right.
personal history,
Yeah.
what are their traumas, what are their skills, what are their, what were all their life experiences that formed them into the human that you're meeting today.
Right.
So these aliens are able to look at our history. They take a time lapse snapshot view and they go all the way back, right, to Lakota history. And they go 150 years back and they're like, oh, here's where, colonial life begins. What they're looking for is not when the first explorers come through.
Okay.
They're not snapping back to Lewis and Clark. They're not. Lewis and Clark are just a couple of like nomadic dudes who are all on about the adventure. Like, I can do that right now today. I've never been to China.
Right. Right.
Like if I'm an adventuresome person, I can go to China. But what I'm not going to do in China, you can't call me a colonizer if I've just gone to explore China and come back with some information to the people who haven't
Right. If you
about what
go,
China looks like and stuff.
yeah, if you go and absorb their culture, then you're not colonizing them in a sense.
Right. Right. You're learning about them and you're bringing back your information and your new experiences, having become a different person for experiencing their culture. All
Okay.
right. But when you get back, let's say you tell all your friends, man, there's this cool place and there's all these cool people and blah, blah, blah. And your friends are like, oh, really? How much land base are they on? And you're like, well, it was a pretty good sized country. You're like all innocent about it. It was a pretty good sized country. Like, they had a lot of stuff. There was like these huge mountains. Oh, yeah. What was the geological composition of said mountains?
There's gold in them there
And
hills.
exactly. And pretty soon your friends are like, you know what? Let's get some backing. Let's raise ourselves a small army and let's just go live
Right.
there. What are they going to do? What are they going to do to us? Like, they don't have, rifles, they don't have ammunitions, they don't have, large caliber munitions. They
Right.
don't have any of this stuff. Let's just go in there, and if they don't like it, we'll just kill them. Because I really want all the minerals you were talking about in those mountains.
Yeah.
I really want that land base. And then your other friends are like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that we can do that because our people might get a little bit upset and go, wait. You guys want us to fund you going and invading some other country with humans in it and taking all their shit? No, thank you, man. So what are we going to do about that? We got to get past them, right? And so some other smart, dude with a whole lot of power and a whole lot of money goes, you're right. We're going to have to otherize them first. We're
Ah.
going to have to make them non-human.
Right. Yeah.
And once the people think of them as non-human, and then we promise them land base,
Becomes a lot
they
easier.
get to be the ones who invade the house and get new land and get in on the ground floor.
Yeah.
As soon as we make it appeal to these poor folks, they will be our standing army. and we will be able to just invade, usurp, and control. Well, what about the people who already live there? We'll figure it out. Wink, wink. And
Well,
then next thing you know, you've got like cavalry people poisoning water so that they can kill off the most indigenous people possible.
right,
You know, we're not talking about any kind of honorific warfare. They reserved that honorific that, you know what, we're not going to fight on Christmas Day. They reserved that for each other.
right,
They didn't reserve that for the indigenous people. They slaughtered us, mowed us down, grandparents, infants, toddlers. Little tiny children were the only ones escaping because they ran away to wander a prairie alone. Having escaped the cavalry's bullets, they die of exposure.
mm,
Like, this is what happened to indigenous people so that the United States could have mini malls.
right,
Like, decolonizing is a huge statement. It's a huge concept because if you are one of the ones that's being colonized or one of the ones that's actively doing the colonizing, either way, it's really, really difficult to see just how much hurt has already been caused and is being caused today.
right. Yeah.
Like let's just say, for example, financial issues, right?
Okay.
I'm from one of the many tribes that hasn't, quote unquote, sold out to corporations.
Okay.
Like, we have a lot of principles, and Lakota people, like, we don't get in bed with greedy people. We just don't. It's like it's part of our culture. It's part of our philosophy. Greed is the polar opposite of what you want to foster in any healthy community. You don't want anyone thinking being greedy is okay.
Right.
Like, just enough to have your tummy full, just enough to have a warm back, just enough to have a comfy bed, just enough to have, a solid roof. That is what each Lakota person is supposed to aspire to. And any little extra that you get, it's a virtue to share with those who can't figure out how to get that extra.
Right. Wow.
So if they don't have a solid shelter, you provide it because you're good at that. If they don't have a warm shirt on their back, you provide it because you're good at that. Like, if you're good at something, you not only use your skills for your own fulfillment, you use your skills to support your entire people and anybody who's vulnerable enough that they can't do it for themselves. Because someday you're not going to be able to do it for yourself.
Right. And then
You're going
they'll
to need
return.
something.
Yeah.
And all those people you did everything for in your life are going to turn around and do everything for you while you need it. They will have your back in spades, in extra. They will be taking care of your family because you did something for them in their time of need. Like, there's certain aspects of just the human experience that we can prevail upon to create a more supportive, more collective life for each other. And for Lakota people, greed is the antithesis of that. It's going to take that away. It's going to break it down. It's going to undermine it. And so you want to, in your culture, have a prevailing message of sharing and caring and altruism. You prevail upon your warriors, especially in Lakota culture. Being a manly man is also being a generous man. An overly generous man who just like basically just like fucking makes it rain on everybody. Just like, he is a
Nice.
provider. He's good at what he does. He can go out there and he can provide for all kinds of people. Instead of hoarding it for himself, he supports as many people as possible. He's supporting entire families with what he does.
Nice.
And he doesn't he doesn't act like you owe it to him. He doesn't. He doesn't have to. because you feel like you owe it to him.
Right, because it's part of your culture.
You feel like, and because it's just part of the human spirit. Like when
Right.
somebody does something for us, we're gonna feel that. Like if you have a problem with like your rent this month, and your friend who you didn't even ask for help, all of a sudden, like you go to talk to your landlord about, like, I don't know, maybe putting off at least one rent payment, please don't kick me out, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and your landlord's like, nah, dude, the check cleared. And you're like, what check? No, dude, just came by. And you find out it was your buddy. Like
Right.
your buddy just came by your landlord's place and paid for your fucking rent. Tell me you don't feel like you owe this motherfucker.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you love this guy. This is now like this dude just managed to get up on rungs on like some of your besties, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, God damn, you know what? I kind of feel bad because the last time I talked to that guy, I was a little bit, short with him.
Right.
Like he's kind of annoying, but Jesus, like he just saved my bacon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're gonna feel like you owe this man.
Uh,
And that's like this dude he's going by a culture, a tradition of, nah, I don't even need you to get me back because having paid your rent makes me manlier.
right.
I look better by helping your ass out.
My reward
You
is
don't
that
need
I
to repay
am.
this dude.
Yeah.
Like he's not asking for repayment.
Right.
He looks great. He looks great among a culture that puts merit in that. If your culture actually holds this as a meritorious act, then any caring and sharing that you see a person do then helps them look better in that. Because no matter what we do, even if we're full-blown anarchists, there's going to be some level of social hierarchy,
Of course.
just a feeling, a sense of it.
Yeah.
There's a sense of a certain person walks in a room and there's something about their attitude and they just take over a room. They're not even trying. It's just something magnetic about their personality.
Right.
They just walk in and people kind of go, and hold their breath a little, waiting for them to talk. Like there's some aspect of that we're never ever going to be able to get away from because it's ingrained within a social species, really.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like we can have a council of people like that.
Yep.
Like I believe, yes, anarchism absolutely can work. And what you want ideally is you've got like about 100 people, let's say, doing statistics. We've got 100 to about 1,000 people, right? And maybe one or two of the people in that group are going to be what we might consider natural born leaders.
Right.
Um, those are the people that command the room when they walk in. Those are the ones that we naturally look towards and we want to trust to lead us. The key is do you have a society that has the values, that has the philosophy, and that has the education
Mm-hmm.
that's going to help train up those natural born leaders to be trustworthy. That's important.
Yeah, for sure.
That's almost going to require an entire culture shift. And that actually becomes a part of decolonization.
Right. It almost has to be a major part of it, right? Because, I mean, it seems like I know from my perspective, the colonial project has been one of largely, like you said, it's been a project of greed, and then it's rather than a communal type of mentality, it's been like an individualist mentality.
Yeah, it's like when I look at it, I see it as a giant pyramid scheme.
Right.
It's literally a giant pyramid scheme. You look at patriarchy, it's the same pyramid scheme. You look at religion, same pyramid scheme, also patriarchal. You
Yeah.
look at colonization, it's got religion and patriarchy and colonialism and imperialism all wrapped up in this giant hierarchy. So
Yeah.
you've got this many-fold system that is coming at it from all different directions, doing the same thing, trying to put us in a giant pyramid scheme where the top, like all of the power and resources, are literally being siphoned upwards.
Yeah.
Like it's not flowing down. There's nothing trickling down on us in any sense that isn't brown or yellow and stenches. Like it's not economics that's trickling down on us. It's more like social sewage.
Yeah.
Because we are down at a bottom where, if you take a look just at raw statistics, 75% of human beings born into an economic bracket remain in the same economic bracket they were born in. Of the 25% that do not stay in the bracket they were born in, the bulk of them move down, not up. So if you look at that tendency, we are getting an increasing number of the people on the lowest rungs. So we've got a poverty class and a poor class that are growing and growing and growing, while a middle class is slowly melting and melting and melting. And this top, heavy top, has all of the power concentrated on the fewest number of hands. Like the most richest people in the world, you could pack into a smallish to medium sized apartment building.
Yeah. That's where they
Like,
should
just
be
think
too.
about that for a second. Just if you're listening to what I'm saying, just think about that for a second. In a
Yeah.
smallish to large apartment building, you could pack 90% of the world's wealth and power.
Yeah.
90%. That is way too much to be concentrated in on so few hands
Yeah.
in a system that has greed as the highest meritorious act that you can do.
Right.
That greed, the lust for that kind of power and wealth. And wealth is arbitrary. Power is actually tangible. Power is tangible. Wealth is arbitrary. It's literally, at this point in human history, it is literally digital zeros
Yeah.
on a screen.
I've kind of been using the analogy or the idea that wealth or money, it's actually not a thing, right? It's a measuring tool for wealth or for power and resources.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, and there's like, we can talk about abstract levels of power. Who is it that has the most power in the world? Well, it would be that majority, that huge, massive majority that's on the bottom of that pyramid. We've actually got all the power in the world because it is through our hands all things are made. All things are made through that poor class, through the proletariat.
Yep.
All things are made. All of us laboring is the only reason Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, like, just start naming them all. Just go ahead and name them all. Go down that huge ass list. Like, they're all trying to cannibalize each other, but they're literally using us as we're the wealth.
Yeah.
Their invisible zeros exist only because we do. If we all suddenly ceased to be, their money is worth nothing. Nothing. Like, if we all decided one day we were going to unify, you know what? Whatever decolonization means, let's leave that for another day. You know what? Whatever racism is, whatever sex, let's just for one day, let's all unify as a proletariat and sit down and refuse to work.
Yeah. General strike.
Globally, collectively. Everybody, I don't care who you are and where you live, Chinese, Vietnamese, Ugandan, Australia. I don't care where you live. If we all collectively, as a proletariat, as just the working fucking schmoes who have to get up and we have to go to work and we don't call in sick, even though it's a wonderful day outside and we love to spend it and we should, oh man, but we can't because gotta make that dough, gotta pay those bills. What if all the rest of us that got to live like that day to day just suddenly collectively as a globe sat down and went, fuck y'all, I want to see the zeros in my bank account. Like literally, this is us seizing the means, and we are right now demanding that the top 10, like I don't care how much you have to save, put like $1 million aside, put
Yeah.
$1 million aside for Monday, and then the rest of your money divvy it up. Like you're going to make it back in literally hours. Like
Right.
if you're Jeff Bezos, you're making like $10,000 a fucking hour, right?
Yeah.
If you decide, you know what, today I'm going to set aside like 5 million bucks of mine and the other multiple hundreds of billions of dollars, I'm going to divvy up and send checks to everybody. If Jeff Bezos does this, Bill Gates does this, blah, 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 blah. By the end of the day, not only have they gotten rid of the bulk of their money,
Yeah.
they've still made $10,000 an hour more on top of it. By the end of the day, they've got, besides the 5 million they set aside, they've got like 5 million more just accumulated while they
Yeah.
were cutting checks.
That's right. They would make even more than they normally do because when people on the lower rung, when the proletariat has money, we spend it.
Exactly.
And that makes them more money.
As soon as those zeros arrive in your bank account, you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna get a new mattress.
Yeah.
I got a used car I've had my eye on. I got like you got plans for that already.
I can pay my bills.
Exactly, because most people are going like, I owe so and so and I owe so and I gotta pay this back. And then I'm finally in the green. Now that I'm in the green, shit, I need a new vacuum. I need a new, like, you're going down the list of all of your needs before you even get to, you know what? I have a little bit left over. I don't need a new pair of shoes, but I'm going to buy one.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to buy myself a new pair of shoes. Like when the proletariat has the money, we don't have it for long. We just don't. Like we're going to spend it. We're going to buy the things that we need. I get so tired of this, like, this political rhetoric of, people going out and, if you didn't spend so much money on your foo-foo coffees and your avocado toast. And
such nonsense.
Dude, if my budget can't take me going and having a nice cup of joe and a piece of avocado toast every day, let's say I want it every fucking day.
Yeah, then there's something wrong.
That is entirely different than, what Bill Gates buys every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And if my budget can't take me just having a simple good cup of coffee because I want it, not because I need it, and a piece of avocado toast, then there's something wrong with my wages.
Yep, exactly.
I'm not getting what I deserve as a laborer then.
Yep.
And you can file all of this right back into decolonization, because now we're talking about how do you bring democracy to the workplace? You have to decolonize the workplace.
Right.
You have to destroy the hierarchy that happens in the workplace.
Yeah,
You're going to decolonize. Like decolonizing is like, I advocate decolonizing for literally everybody, because I always point out, you know what? Europe was a bunch of tribes when the Romans got there and started invading.
Right.
The Romans colonized European little tribal people. They were all a bunch of happy ass pagans just running around, like fornicating in fields and being happy with themselves. And all of a sudden, here come the Romans. And they're like, nah, you got to do like we do, but you'll get some advantages to it. And so, it's the same spiel that we get now. Well, you can't have iPhones without capitalism. And we just buy it. We're like, yeah, they told me. And I can't have an iPhone without capitalism. And so capitalism. Like, we don't even stop to think about what is capitalism right now, except exactly a a a serfdom, a fiefdom
Right. Yeah.
with a pro temp crown we elect every 4 years.
Yeah. It's just the, like the veneer, right? Like it's the illusion placed on top of, this type of, serfdom.
Right. And we're told that this is the only possible way that you can have civilization.
Right.
Without it, we don't have, we don't have YouTube. We don't have technology. We won't have iPhones. You won't even get your coffee, let alone toilet paper, if we don't have capitalism and hierarchy. Like, are you insane? You want to destroy all this? Do you want to be like the USSR? Do you want to be like Joseph Stalin?
Do you want a
That's what
Stalinist
you're
Russia?
asking for. And you're just like sitting there going, geez, I didn't know it was that bad. Gaw, sorry I asked.
They've made a few logical leaps there.
Yeah, it takes a lot of critical thinking if you are going to try to break down that stuff in yourself.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there are other people who've already done the work. Like, I got raised this way. I didn't have to break down these barriers for myself. These were barriers that my parents had already broken before me. Their parents had already broken before them. And we've been building on something that has been barrierless for a long, long time. When people talk about glass ceilings and breaking glass ceilings in modern politics, I'm like, oh, no, wait. This is just like y'all saying that women got the vote in 1924. No, they did not. White women got the vote
Yep.
in 1924.
Yep.
White people are breaking glass ceilings.
Right.
In my tribe, I'm non-male. I've always been non-male. I'm a chief. That glass ceiling was broken long before me.
Right.
Like, in my people, there was never that ceiling. Sky's the limit for us. Like, there are other ways to human, and there are other ways to bring in cultures, and there's other things that you can change your own culture and your cultural aspects. Like, we find out all the time that shit didn't work we thought worked.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we find this out all the time. That's how science works. Like, science, if science like figured everything out, it would quit.
Yep.
But until it does, like, we're finding new stuff out all the time that we took for granted in a more ignorant human past. And I'm not saying we need to throw out everything in human history because, well, that's a bad idea. A lot of them had a lot of really great ideas that we can
Yep.
bring forward and shine them up and like see if this works now. And one of the things that we can see if works is we're past the industrial age, yo. We're done. We're in the technological age now.
Yeah.
Like, we can change things. We can change an entire globe. We are literally figuring out how to navigate the quantum universe. Why do we have a national debt? And who does
Yeah.
like the human species owe all this money to? Saturn?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Why is there a global debt? Who do we owe? Is Saturn going to come down here being a big bully going like, you owe me. I'm going to break your planet legs
The
if
banks.
you don't pay me back. Like,
Yeah. The banks are actually those alien colonialists.
right. Like, looking through our time going,
We can exploit
if
them
we own
here.
everything, like, we could get all the lithium off this planet.
Right. Yeah.
Like, half the reason we're exploring the universe, here's the thing that gets me the most. Half the reason we're exploring the universe is not because we've got modern day Lewis and Clarks going, fuck, what's on that other planet? That's not it. Those are the people that we pay to go look at the planet.
Right. Right.
But the people who are funding everything, they're like, how much is that asteroid worth? And how can I get it back to the planet?
Yeah, they're your Elon Musks. They're out there looking for where they can draw new minerals and exploit, resources.
Like, what's that? I can't remember the name the number name of that one asteroid that they've recently found, but they said that it's actually coming
Yeah, I'm not
somewhat
sure.
close enough that we can reach out and have some chance of actually grasping a hold of this asteroid that they call, okay, they call it Worth. I'm doing air quotes, Worth.
Right.
Something like $124 trillion. And I'm like, how do people hear these kind of numbers and not go, this is the most arbitrary bullshit I've ever heard? How is a random rock floating through the universe even worth anything?
Yeah, it's so clearly
That
made up.
can't feed so many people. Like, if you guys bring back this asteroid to my planet,
Yeah.
not only have you used all these resources to go out there and grab it, how's it going to feed the hundreds of millions of human beings that were starving today? Like, what value is it? You guys are arbitrarily putting value, and you're basing your value on shiny minerals that you happen to find in, like, a dollar is based on some concept of like gold and silver, which is an arbitrary shiny mineral that happens to be hidden around in different pockets in stone. None
Yeah.
of this can we eat.
Yeah, like
None of this can we clothe ourselves in.
there's a lot of those people that they think that we should go back, like society should go back to the gold standard, like our dollar should be based on the gold, as though that was somehow less arbitrary than what we have now.
Right, right, right. Like, dude, this is the whole thing's made up. Like,
Yeah.
like we could base it off of whatever we wanted. We could base it off of like oxygen molecules.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
and it's going to be actually of more value because
that's right.
we need oxygen molecules.
Yeah. We actually need the oxygen and, or say water. I mean, we use water. That's valuable. Like, yeah, it's silly. So,
But yeah, I mean, all of this stuff, when I think of decolonizing, I think of tying all this shit in because this is the kind of stuff that it was imported to my, it was an export of Europe and it was imported to my hemisphere. Like, we didn't have none of that shit.
right.
And I'm not saying it was all coming up roses for Lakota. That's not what I'm saying. Like, there were a lot of aspects where life was much better, and there were a lot of aspects where life was much worse. And it's that way for everybody, except for when you start talking about it's that way for everybody, you look back in history and you find, all those worses were not created equal,
Yeah,
because some of
exactly.
those worses are way worse. And one of the things that I see as being way worse is capitalism and colonization, period.
Yeah.
Like, so there's this, I don't even know what the word for it is. I don't even know if there is a word for it, to be honest. But there's a concept of creating a culture that is so good, that the people are so happy living within it, that other people see their example and just go, fuck, I want that, man. And just start changing their lives to be like that. That's not colonization.
No, yeah, that would be a whole other thing.
Like, that's not colonization. You're not colonizing people that way. You are just sitting there being you, living your best life, and other people are looking at your life and going, man, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that. And choosing to change their lives in such a way that they get that. That's not colonism. That's not colonialism. That's not colonization. It's not any of the words remotely connected to the actual act of colonizing. Colonizing is looking at somebody else's backyard and going, I want your backyard too.
Yeah. And
Not
then, yeah.
instead of my backyard. In addition to my backyard, I want your backyard. And so what if you don't like it? Stop me.
Too
Like,
bad.
what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And so you've got this ongoing march of once this person has stolen your home and moved in and relegated you to some back nasty corner of your property and has convinced you now that they were kind enough to let you stay on the property. Never mind, they gave you the crappiest corner ever.
Right.
But they were kind enough to let you stay on the property. And you know what? They sometimes send you out a package of ramen noodles. So you should be happy.
Right.
You should be happy and grateful. You know, they're now squatting in your house, pretending like they did all the work to build that house, pretending that was all them.
Yeah.
Pretending that God delivered them the opportunity to own your house, and now they own it by rights.
Right.
Now that they're squatting in your house, they're looking at you and they're going, now, if you can act more like us, we'll let you back into the house.
But if you can't, or if you don't want to,
you're stuck out there.
Yeah.
You're stuck out there if you don't want to. To get back into the house, to use the toilet, to take the shower, to have the nice things, you're going to have to act like us.
Yeah.
You're going to have to give up your individuality. You're going to have to hew things off of yourself that make you you, that make you unique. And when you're talking about the system in the United States, you're also talking about a heaping helping of Christian heteronormative.
Right.
And so if you are a member of the LGBT plus community, you are expected to stop being you.
Right.
You are expected to hide who you are and pretend to be someone you are not. You're not allowed to love the people you want to love. You're not allowed to marry the people you want to marry. And God help you if you try, and you better not ask for fucking cake.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, I mean, because we got a Supreme Court now that's going to say, nobody owes you a cake. You haven't assimilated property. Like, you need to get with the program here. We're trying to colonize this place, and you are being anti-colonial. And that just will not do. We wear robes up here, and that makes us the authority. Like, when you look at this entire system, I don't see democracy when I look at the United States.
No, hey?
I see a desperately pretentious, egotistical, theocratically based imperialist pretending to be a democracy.
Yeah.
Like, it's all just like a shined up turd. Like, that's what they did. Like we got this thing in a showcase, and I'm looking at it going, that's a turd. And they're like, no, look, it's covered in this plastic and it's all shiny. This cannot possibly be a turd. I'm like, that's a lacquered turd, yo. You lacquered it, but it's still a turd. You never seen a turd? This is not a turd. This is a paperweight. And I'm going, no, it's a turd. It's a turd.
It's a shiny turd that you can put on a paper, but it's not a paper.
You can call it what you want, but it's still a turd.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, like, when I look at the United States, I'm going, like, I get that you guys, like, were experimenting when you first started off. I get that.
Right.
I get that you were trying to break free of a monarchy. And I get that this was all a brand new idea to those old, wealthy, powerful white dudes.
Right.
But let's be honest about who they were. They were buckle wearing, makeup wearing, high heel wearing. They wore breeches and tights. They used makeup to hide the facial sores because they didn't bathe regularly. Their teeth were rotting out because they still had not invented toothbrushes.
Right.
They were powdering their wigs against lice, yo. Like, ew. This is nasty. They invented perfume because they had not just armpit BO, that smegma smell. Can you imagine what kind of assault to the senses it would be to be one of those aliens if you can pop back through time and actually meet one of those quote unquote founding fathers?
Right.
Talk about how women are. They were talking about how women are. They were still using leeches for headaches.
Ugh,
Like,
yeah.
we're talking about people who used laudanum. Like, they were literally like just sipping on the opiate.
Right.
Just go. Opiate. Like, with no concept. Like, I get that these were people who were all thinkers of their time.
Sure.
I
Sure.
get that. I get that according to the standards of the day, they were actually quite rebellious. I get that too. But they also had a
Yeah.
whole lot of ignorance that any average graded high school grad who got at least passable SATs or ACTs enough to get into the local city college had more education than any single one of the founding fathers, with the exception possibly of Benjamin Franklin. Like, and Ben Franklin was the only one who was like, fuck y'all, I'm still doing my thing. And he was totally open about how much drugs he did, about how much sleeping around he did, about experimenting with Lebanon men like he did. Like, he was pretty open about that. And that's why all the rest of the founding fathers went, I don't know about Ben. He's awfully smart, but I think that's going to be the extent of how we include him.
Right.
And so old Ben only finds himself as barely like a mention. He's not really like, he's historically mentioned, sure. We all know his name, sure. But when it comes to how many people signed this and how many of these founding fathers became future blah, 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 Ben Franklin's kind of out there doing his own thing. He was
Right.
just weird and out there and wonky and just a thinker of the time. Like, Ben Franklin's kind of the exception to the rule of the rest of those white guys. Like, we're talking about one founding father coming forward and saying, you know what, while we're recreating everything for ourselves, why don't we give women the vote? And he got shot down by like 75% of all the other dudes who are standing in the room going, huh, what are you talking about? I want my wife voting. Are you crazy?
Yeah. We can't have that.
Like, we're talking about, yeah, they were progressive in that they were even voting.
Right.
But by our modern standards, these dudes were Neanderthal like cavemen.
Definitely stuff that can be moved past at some point.
We can update their shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's my point. We can update and do let's do a Constitution 2.0. Like, let's take the foundations of the old Constitution. I'm happy with the old Constitution in the sense that I think it's a respectable document. But could it be improved? Hells yeah. There's lots of improvements we need to make. We need to make sure that money stays the fuck away from our politics, number one. That needs to be an amendment. Like, we need to make sure that human beings are recognized as being human beings. If you have the DNA of a human being, you have human rights.
Yeah.
Never mind what your gender, what your sexuality, what your sex, what your, melanin amount, your ethnicity. I don't care if you have human DNA, you're a human, you get human rights.
Yeah.
Civil rights come with being a citizen. That's it. Yeah. That's it. A citizen. You're a citizen, you get citizen rights. You got all the rights due to any other citizen. If you want a fucking cake, you get to have a cake, okay? Like, you get your cake. You can't be going around because you're, Sally Bigot going, I'm not going to make them a cake. Then make your own private club. We can make laws that get around that. We've got clubs that you have to be a certain way or a certain type of person to even join the club. If you've got a club membership, then you get to buy a cake from this cake store, but you have to be a member of the club in good standing. We can easily do that. And if you're a public cake store, if you're just a regular fucking cake store that you don't have a membership, I don't, anybody coming through that door gets the right to have their service.
Yeah.
And you know what? This whole, well, I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Oh, that's got to have lines, though. Like, we need to put a cap on that. You can't just arbitrarily say I can serve whoever I want.
Right.
Because what if you're a gun store?
Well, that's how like segregation was, right? Like they just chose not to serve certain
Right.
people, right?
Yeah, I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Okay, but can it be any individual because this dude's a douche? And not just because somebody walked in wearing a pin you didn't like? And
Yeah.
am I going to apply this to actual fascists? Here's where we walk into the tolerance paradox. And this is a very important aspect of decolonization. Because if you are decolonizing, what you're asking to do is getting rid of a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
To get rid of a hierarchy, you are actually putting yourself in a position where you are asking for less authority over what people are doing every day, which means you're going to have to require a higher degree of regulation on what people do every day. And that's going to have to be a social contract sort of situation.
Right.
You're going to have to be able to look at, Joe Blow coming up over here and Jane Doe coming up over here and be able to say, okay, the two of you need to have a social contract with the rest of us. And if you go too far past, we're going to have to talk about what the consequences of going too far are.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to have some level of consequences to actions, but we're going to have to do it in a way that is less harmful and less in your face, pointing fingers, going, you need to do this and you need to
Right.
do that. What we want is to encourage people to make these choices on their own.
Yeah,
to see the value in doing these things.
Yeah. That's something that a lot of people like they misconstrue about, like you say, anarchism. They assume that it's like a society without any like social contract, or like there's no order at all, except there has to be a social contract, right? Like we have to have like a way of dealing with each other that we all consider kind of fair.
Exactly. I think people get way too scared of, because they think that when you read books like I remember when I read the book Lord of the Flies, it ended up in this argument with my teacher. And the reason it ended up in an argument is because I get done with this book and I freaking consumed it, right? Because it's a small book anyway, and I was reading a lot at the time.
Right.
And so I just consumed it. It was like one weekend, boom, I'm done, right? As soon as I'm done with the book, I'm like, just book on the ground. This is bullshit. This isn't the way reality works. My dad's like, what? Well, my dad had never read the book. Like, my dad barely got 4 years of public school and he ran away for most of those months.
Right.
So, like, he didn't ever read the book. He's like, what? And I'm like, this book, Dad, it's such bullshit. So my mom comes along. She's like, what are you reading? My mom, she's read a lot of books. And she's like, I hate that story.
Yeah.
And my dad's like sitting there talking with us about, well, I don't get it. What is the story about? So we're like basically explaining to him. It's a bunch of, like English Academy white boys get stranded on a deserted island and blah, blah, blah. We give him the short version of the book. And he's like, that's not how reality works. I'm like, exactly. Because reality doesn't work that way. If you take all of the rules and regulations off of a human being, and that person just suddenly goes haywire trying to murder and, just getting all somehow. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How did your society manage to produce this? A kid what are you even doing? How did this child get raised?
Yeah,
like, how
exactly.
did you people raise this child that this is what happened? Because if we literally have two examples in reality of this happening to a group of boys.
Right.
And both times there were either a higher percentage or all of the oh, kitty. Sorry, it's a kitty. you have like both of these stories are telling stories of the opposite, but in both cases, you've got, I think, one group of boys, there was like half of them were like indigenous people from the area of the islands that they got stranded on. And in the other case, it was most of them were
Okay.
actually from area indigenous peoples. And in both cases, they belonged, yes, they did absolutely belong to a school for boys.
Okay.
In both cases, yes, they absolutely were minors. They were all underage. In both cases, though, they did fine.
Yeah.
They
They
just
work
like
together
they
and
were fishing and
yeah.
like getting water and like had their own little like democracy set up. Like
Yeah.
they were fine. And in one case, not only was there one adult still there, they had nursed that dude back to health. Like they didn't kill him. They didn't stick no pig head on pikes. They didn't like walk around trying to, kill off the fat kid with glasses. Like they didn't
Right.
do any of that stuff. Like they were fine. They got along well. They worked together. And in the one case, it was 18 months them
Holy
kids lived
cow.
on that island.
Wow.
18 months. They were fine though. I mean, were they a little slender? Yeah. But
Probably,
were they
yeah.
fit as hell? Yes.
But they were
Like
still
they were
eating and
fit.
surviving and they weren't killing each other and
Right, right. They weren't like all sickly and weak and, barely getting along. They were just happy, healthy, happy to be found too, I'm sure. Because if
right.
you get, like if you're raised in civilization and you suddenly get stuck on a deserted island, like
Yeah.
like there's no movie that they've ever depicted what that would actually look like. You know what I'm saying?
It would be
Like
rough.
the first time you gotta wipe your ass with banana leaves, you're already over that island.
Yeah,
Like
that's
you're
right.
already over it. Even if the water's all nice and warm and blue, and they're like,
Yeah.
you can have all of that, perfect setup, beautiful white sandy beach, but you just had to wipe your ass with a banana leaf. You're not gonna not stink for the next 18 months of your life.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
know what I mean? Like you're not gonna get a cushion to sit on. You're not gonna be able to just have like a coffee
Yeah, that's right.
or like a hot chocolate. Like you're gonna miss
Yeah.
your Reese's peanut butter cups. Like
Yeah, no kidding.
it's a lot more hellish than people tend to imagine. But still, 18 months. And them other kids, I think they were stuck for like I want to say it was like 8 or 9 months.
Right.
But
That's still a long time.
in both cases, it's a bunch of dudes that got stuck on an island together. They did not devolve into craziness. They were kids. They were young.
Mm.
Might adult? I think honestly, I think adults would have a more difficult time because the older we get, the more set in our ways
Yeah, a
we
little
get.
less adaptable.
Right. Where kids are like, you can throw them back into like here's a genuine primitive style democracy that you're going to have until some, wandering, cruise line happens to go by your island and
Yeah.
see the column of smoke coming off of it. you know, like it's going to be a while before you get rescued. You have to do something until then. And so you come up with this rudimentary sort of, democracy. There's probably at least one charismatic person with you that's kind of sort of the default leader,
Yeah.
but none of you are really leaders per se, and so you just kind of go with it, and you all make these decisions. Let's make sure. And there's probably one guy who just doesn't really care what any of you do all the time. He's just like, sure, I'll do it.
Right.
And there's probably one guy who's like, man, are you sure you should? But you need both those guys.
Yep.
Like you learn pretty quick. You need both those guys. You need the one guy to go, sure, I'll do it because shit's going to get done with him.
Yeah.
You need the other guy who goes, yeah, I don't know, because you might need to have a second thought about some of your bonehead ideas.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we're also human,
Yep.
which means we have a potential for bonehead ideas.
There's a lot of those out there, so
Like, and sometimes the smarter you are, the more boneheaded your boneheaded idea will be. Like, you have this typically I have these great and wonderful ideas. Yeah, until you don't. In
Yeah.
which case, it fails so much worse
Yeah.
than other people's
Exactly.
like mediocre failures. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's a trade-off to it, but that's why you want all those human beings around you. And you don't like part of decolonizing is recognizing that you don't have a singular leader.
Right.
That if you're talking about mathematics, there's one person who's good at that. If you're talking about linguistics, there's one person who's good at that. If you're talking about economics, there's another person who's good at that. If you're talking about whatever it is, the subject matter that your people need to do or to help with or to tackle or is getting challenged in this particular scenario, the leader shifts according to the need.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that we aim for when we're talking about decolonization. Like, and it's going to take work because it took this long to colonize.
Right.
It's going to take a while to decolonize, and it's important to have the discussions because it starts us all on our own individual work. And the more people that we can get doing the individual work, then the broader that decolonization begins to just kind of ripple out and affect more people. And what I'm hoping is that by doing decolonization work as individuals, we will example, like what I said at the beginning, example that change, that cultural shift, that other people look at your life and go, fuck, I want what you have. Like, I want that. I want to have that. What you got, that's what I want. I want to choose that. How do I get that? And then have that availabilities to then say, dude, I'm totally glad you asked. This is just decolonizing. And it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to get where I'm at. But you can get there, and here's where you start. Here's how you start. Because if enough of us can work it out so we've got it going efficiently, then we've got a good example so that other people who are less patient, where they're like, nah, that takes too long. I want to decolonize faster though. Is there a shortcut?
There's no shortcut.
Like we got to be able to hone it down so that we can like get it as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
Because like it's taken me years to work on some of the stuff that I've had to work on, and it took my parents years to work on the stuff that they
Right.
had to, and my grandparents too. And so working on all these things,
Yeah.
it has to take precedence in your life. It has to become a priority as a private individual
Yeah.
to do this work on yourself and example it by living that way and saying how you're doing by living that way. You are opening the door to other people who might want to look in and go, that's actually pretty cool. And I want to try that too. Do you have a recipe? And if you meet and get around enough other people decolonizing, then you're liable to start working out. Oh man, I wish I knew your method because that's a lot faster than what I did. Or there could be more than one method. So, like, for example, if you're trying to get people to start decolonizing, one of the important things to try to teach people is critical thinking skills. You got to
Yeah.
teach people how to ask a question and how to ask an honest question in such a way as you're not being disingenuous enough to already have an answer in your head that you're asking the question to. Like, you got to quit that. The first thing that you have to do is a process of decolonizing is admit that one of the things that this society hands you is a monstrous ego, a huge ego. The arrogance of this system that it builds in people, the
Right.
arrogance is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can see it in almost any group on social media, especially if they're a leftist group. This is one of the
Yeah.
best examples. Go into a leftist group, and all these people in here are leftists. They're either socialists or communists. Let's put them all, they're all far lefties. They're all socialists and communists. Go in there. I did this the other day. Go in there and say the word stupid is ableist. Just do that. And watch the clap back you're gonna get. We're a
Right.
bunch of fucking edgelords who they fancy themselves woke bros.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
gonna come riding in on that same wave that all those edgelords do. Whoa, actually, and then begin to speech you on how no, it really isn't. Even though you're like, look up the etymology of that word.
Right.
Like, just because it doesn't have the same uh, social stigma as saying, for example, a racial epithet. Like, let's say you're trying to compare um, uh, marginalizing terms. We can all agree that the racial epithet that is dropped by the KKK Klansman
Mhm.
is um, going to be hurtful. Like, we
Right.
immediately can agree there. That's a hurtful word. That's why we don't use those terms anymore.
Yeah.
But then when we use terms like stupid and moron and
Mhm.
idiot, these are terms that are also hurtful.
I mean, that's why we use them, right? That's why people use
Right,
those words. It's to hurt somebody or to insult somebody.
right, to insult somebody else. But when you use it, what most people don't realize is the reason that you quit using the racial epithet is not because you're concerned there might be a black person in the room or an indigenous person in the room or an
No.
Asian person in the room. That's not why you quit using it. You quit using it because it gives you an underlying sense that to have these other races is bad, that
Mhm.
being these other races is bad. And you don't want to get that in your own mindset. And you don't want to get that into other people listening's mindset. You
Yeah.
quit using these terms because you know that it causes
Oh.
damage to a collect to have these terms in our vernacular. And so we insist that they go away. We start contacting HR, human resources. You can get fired for using these words now. You
Right.
can absolutely get fired for using these words. At the very least, you use that word, and everybody in the room is going to go, oh, there's a big old gasp. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
you used that word. Okay, if I use the word fuck, I cannot possibly insult fucks everywhere. Fucks
Yeah.
are fuckless. They have no fucks to give. They do
Yeah.
not care. Fucks are not a thing. They're not a being. They're not a person. They don't have ears. And yet people will grasp their pearls at that.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to say that on CNN or MSNBC,
Right.
but I'm allowed to say stupid.
Yeah.
Never mind how many people with low IQs have been made fun of, have been victims of genocide.
Right. Yeah.
They are currently victims of genocide.
Yeah.
We have allowed a pandemic to go through our population that we knew was going to target the vulnerable, and we let it anyway.
Mhm.
And those of us who are trying to wear masks, trying to keep clean and stuff like that, like, we're doing our best. But why were we not out in the streets? Why were we not pouring out for disabled people and elderly people? How is this not ableist and ageist?
Oh, it
How
is.
is this not
Yeah.
genocide?
Yeah.
Like, we've allowed genocide to happen. Nobody specifically targeted them, but we allowed a virus that does target them to just go wiping through our population. And we did not pour out in the streets to tell our administration that they better fucking save our fellow citizens. We didn't do that. We didn't do that. And that's all of our responsibility collectively. That becomes a part of decolonizing. Like, all this shit becomes interconnected. It's why, like, for me, when I was like, oh, I got the opportunity to talk about decolonizing, a
Yeah.
lot of other people are just like, I don't even know what that is. And I'm just like, how could you not? How could you not? Because it's like one of the most important movements that literally everyone on the planet should be getting behind. Because we're not talking about just capitalist, European, ancient happenings bullshit. We're talking about current shit. We're talking about shit that China's doing. Ask ask Tibet if they're getting colonized.
Right. Yeah, it's everything.
Like China's imperialist too.
Yep.
Like they might not be capitalists, but fuck all if they're not imperialists. They've been imperialists right along. They have been colonizing right along.
Yeah.
So it's not just that these people do it, but these people don't. It's not an ethnic thing. It's not, it's not even a capitalist thing. Like it doesn't have to do with that. It's about a mindset that you can find occurring in like even religions. Because what is religion doing? What is that drive? And it's a lot easier to let's separate ourselves from Christianity, because it's difficult to see things with Christianity when you're
Right.
part of the mainstream system because it's so baked in. Let's make it more obvious and take a look over at Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at the Muslim people, and let's take a look at like Al Qaeda and ISIS and what their main messages are.
Right. Those groups want a type of colonialism on their own, right?
You're gonna die unless you come to us.
Yeah. You have to assimilate with our values.
They've got a religious colonialism.
Yeah.
They want us to become Muslim.
Yeah.
And then they are going to quit killing us. How is this not the same message that Christians already had? For an indigenous person, I'm like sitting over here just going, fucking come on with yourselves then, because I have been fighting colonialism my entire life. It was handed to me by my parents and my grandparents, and we have not given up the fight. So if you want to bring Islam along to come and try to colonize us with that, go for it, man. We can take it. We will fight hard. We'll fight just as hard. Because and we're going to have white people on our side this time because they're not going to like it too much.
Yeah, because they like their religion.
Right. They like their religion they're colonizing us with. Like, they're going to fight you guys back. Like, good luck. You're going to have to get through the white people before you get to us. Like, it's the one time that I can say it's nice to have a bunch of Christians around, I guess. Like, they're making sure that we're not getting colonized by Muslims.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I look at the Muslim people who are actually within the borders of my United States.
Right.
And I can see that they are marginalized people. They are being mistreated in my continent.
Yeah, they're also being victimized in lots of ways.
Right. And so, like, I kind of also understand in a way where ISIS and Al Qaeda are coming from, because, like, while they're also carrying the shitty ass message of I want to be the one to colonize you, like, no, don't listen to these Christians, they're infidels, but listen to me. Like, I don't, I'm not happy about that. Yeah. But at the same time, I also see why the fuck they're so pissed off.
Yeah,
why are we over there?
That's one of those nuanced discussions that so many people aren't capable of having when it comes to a subject like Islam. Like,
right.
There's different degrees of it, right? Like, you got to understand where they're coming from on some level, but also you don't want to be like pro-colonialism or terrorism per se, or stuff like that. But yeah, you still have to acknowledge, like, there's people suffering who are Muslims who aren't, because of their faith, and
like, and I can have that nuanced perspective where, if it's the little girl who's who got bullied to death and was allowed to drown in England because she wears a head covering. Man, I ain't about that shit.
No, that's right.
I ain't about that shit. Like, there's some parents that have severely failed society by raising children who would do that.
Yep.
Because that's how that happens. Somebody messed up some perfectly good kids. Like, that's how that happens. But then at the same time, I can be pissed as fuck that out of all of the shit to be pissed about on the planet, a bunch of assholes decided to get pissed about a middle school teacher showing his kids some cartoons and fucking beheaded him in the street.
Right. You can be pissed on both ends, right? Like
I'm pissed about that too.
Yeah.
Again, some parents messed up,
right,
and raised the kind of people who were going to grow up to behead a teacher.
Yeah.
A teacher. Like, I can be pissed at both of those, but I can also be pissed that the Quakers have had to be the shining example of the very best that Christianity can do, while you've got Westboro Baptist
Mm-hmm.
assholes on the other end. They're both quoting the same scripture.
Right. Yeah.
And it happens no matter what religion you're looking at,
Yeah.
because you're watching it right now in India with Hindus.
Oh yeah.
You can
Yeah.
see it in China with Buddhists.
Yeah.
Like, somebody, someplace is getting the short end of the stick because religion.
Yep. Exactly.
So when I look at that, being an atheist, I'm more than happy to lump all that shit in together and go, religion ruins everything.
I don't like it.
Like, because it does. If you can take the
Yeah.
same book and be so kind and so loving and so compassionate and so altruistic as to just be enviable, and then in the same book be so angry and so murdery and so rapey that you yourself look miserable
Right.
holding that book. I don't
Yeah.
want to have anything to do with that book then, because that book is giving some wildly different answers and telling me that that book means, oh, well, that's because it's open to interpretation.
Well, then
No.
what do we need it for?
Exactly.
Like,
how is this benefiting us then?
if I'm just bringing my own ethics to the book and making the book fit them, then my ethics are good enough without the book.
I don't even see where I need the book if my ethics actually have me not murdering and raping anybody.
Well, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I literally do as much crime every day as I want to, and
Yep.
it's none.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
and I don't need a
maybe not
religion
none,
to
but
get there.
maybe not none, but yeah, I definitely
As
don't
far
hurt
as I
people.
know, as far as I know, I'm not doing any kind of crime, as far as I know. But then again, when you start talking about that, you're also talking about, we've got standards in that too, though, because in some countries, just to me, existing as an atheist is a crime.
Right. Yeah, that's right. The law
And,
isn't necessarily a perfect ethical guideline either, right? Like, because it's written by
right,
flawed people who have flawed views of society and whatnot.
right, right. And I think, for me, that's why I think in place of religion, I like to put critical thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's important. It's important that I be able to question myself, the things that I've always just assumed to be true. What do I have that belief wise that's based on facts? What's based on just a bunch of hooey? What's based on what somebody else told me that I never really thought to investigate?
Yeah.
When you start asking those questions, you're starting down a track towards decolonizing, because the biggest part of decolonizing is, all right, what is colonizing if I'm going to decolonize?
Yeah, what do I got to do to stop the thing? Yeah.
How do I stop the thing and then actively work to counter the thing? I must first understand what the thing is and how it is affecting my life. Like, how is it wound up in me?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work.
Yeah. That's a good spot to end it, I think. We're running out on time here. I don't know. I mentioned to you before that there was a segment of the show called Foes and Comrades. I'm not sure if you have any foes or comrades you'd like to call out or shout out for.
I have a foe that I thought about that I have to shout out, especially in regards to decolonizing.
Okay.
And that is the infamous centrist/moderate.
Yeah.
That is the foe. In my opinion, that is the biggest foe of decolonizing. And that's because they are just smart enough that Dunning-Kruger has been engaged.
Right.
Like, they're just smart enough that they're fully engaged in Dunning-Kruger, and they're like, no, I have the answers. No, I have the answers. And you're like, no, man, okay, you don't know enough to know that you don't have the answers.
Right.
Like, I know enough to know I don't have the answers, and therefore I know enough to know that you definitely don't have the answers. You're still back on that other end of the spectrum on that Dunning-Kruger graph where you're way the fuck back. Like you think too much of yourself. And in your centrist moderate position, you are defending the people that I need most to change. Like I need that extreme other right side to do a lot of changing. And the centrist moderate is like apologizing for their position. No, we need two sides.
Yeah. Okay. My foe is the Liberal and Conservative parties of Canada. We recently had a vote to in the Parliament. There was a bill brought forward to increase the tax on people with income over 20 million a year by 1%. And of course, the Liberal and Conservative parties both voted against it. So, yes,
1%.
Yes, 1% is too much to tax these. I mean, they might already be paying a percentage of their income in taxes, but this would be 1 more percent. It's no good.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a comrade, my friend and co-host over on the other show I do, Skeptarchy. He is currently, his name is Eric, and he is currently standing out in front of the legislative building in Regina, Saskatchewan here with a couple of signs. And one of them is Justice for Joyce Echiquan, and the other is Justice for Dahlia Kafi. Joyce Echiquan was an Indigenous woman who recorded herself while she was being treated in a hospital. And she caught on this video nurses mistreating her and saying some racist shit before they gave her too much morphine and caused her death. So it's a clear case of mistreatment and discrimination that caused her death. And those who were directly responsible were fired, but have not faced any kind of charges. And the system that allowed them to be in that position hasn't changed at all. And Dahlia Kafi was a young black woman who was assaulted by police officer Alex Dunn, and he threw her to the ground face first and broke her nose. And I believe that was on trial here not that long ago. It was also caught on video and is just a single example of the way that police mistreat black and brown people in Canada. So he's out in front of the legislative building here. Eric is protesting justice for Dahlia Kafi and justice for Joyce Echiquan. And he is my comrade. Shout out this week.
Right on. Shout out to Eric. Thank you for your service.
So where can people find you, and do you want to be found on the internet?
I actually don't mind being found as long as it's by lefties.
Okay. That's fair.
The rest of them, if they find me, I prefer that they then get themselves lost again.
Yeah, that is fair. Yeah.
I can be found on Facebook, Joey Taksha Hushte, which is going to be a difficult thing to spell, but that's all right. Just try it.
Give it a shot.
Just give it a try. I can also be found, I'm on YouTube usually. If you only see me in the chat sections of, things I'm either caught the live stream on or decided to draw as the Indigenous Heretic. And I'm working on other stuff to start getting my.
Oh no! Did I lose you?
A shortage of Indigenous voices, and I see that there are a shortage of Indigenous voices. There's a shortage of people who have the ability and the opportunity to talk about stuff like this, and there's an increasing desire to hear it, and which I'm like really super happy with, because this has not always been the case. If you'd have asked me 25 years ago, how many white folk come to you to talk about decolonization? I'd be like, zero.
But it
Like,
happens.
that's straight. Like it's kind of like, if you were to ask black folk 25 years ago, how many people come to you to talk about reparations? Zero. That's
Yeah.
something that's a discussion that only happens at 25 years ago. It was happening in black and indigenous spaces, but it wasn't happening in anybody else's.
Yeah.
Talking about land back and decolonizing, again, happening in black and indigenous spaces. Not
Yeah.
just now. Just now it's starting to come outside of the black and indigenous spaces and into white folks. And that's important because, like, white folks, like, they need it. They need it. They've been for centuries, they have been colonized and being in the act of colonialism and don't even know that they're perpetrating it. And like, it would behoove them. Like, there's gifts that you get for being able to do that work. And I just want to see more white people do it, not just because it's going to behoove me, but because they're going to be happier people for it. Like, I don't have to worry about a bunch of miserable ass white folks. Like, if they're all happy because they're starting to decolonize. You know?
It's better for everyone.
Right. It's self-servicing.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad that you had me on. Thank you.
If you want to find out more from me, you can go to anchor.fm/skepticalleftist. If you want to read the show notes for these episodes, which sometimes are kind of comprehensive, but sometimes they're not, you can go to skepticalleftistpod.wordpress.com. Or if you want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/skepticalleftist. My handle on Twitter is @hardcoreskeptic, and you can find me on Facebook at The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist, or search for one of the million Cory Johnstons that are on Facebook. Thanks, and have a good one.